It's 8 p.m. here in the French capital. You're watching live from Paris on France 24. I'm Tom Burgess-Watson. These are our top stories. The outcome of the US election still isn't clear. What we do know is that neither Joe Biden nor Donald Trump has yet reached the key 270 electoral college votes. We also know that overall turnout was the highest in 120 years. The French health authorities announce a new daily record of 58,046 new COVID-19 cases. The Paris authorities have announced stricter new lockdown measures. And the president of Kosovo resigns after his indictment for war crimes dating back 3 decades is confirmed by a tribunal at The Hague. He denies any wrongdoing. Welcome back. It's been 2 days since Election Day in the United States, and still neither Donald Trump nor Joe Biden has managed to reach the magic number of 270 electoral college votes, meaning that neither candidate has so far managed to win enough votes to win the White House. Well, millions of votes are still being tabulated, but what we do know is that Biden has already received more than 71 million votes. That's the most in history. And some news agencies are calling Arizona in Biden's favor. Others say it's still too soon, meaning that he's either won 253 or 264 electoral college votes, meaning that he seems to be edging closer to becoming the president-elect. Meanwhile, President Trump, however, has just 213 or 214 electoral votes. Again, that number varies from one news agency to another. And for Trump to reach the key 270 votes, he now faces a tougher path. He'd have to win all the remaining battleground states. Meanwhile, President Trump is sowing doubt about the outcome of the race. Yesterday, he falsely claimed that he'd won. He's also been mobilizing his legal team, citing irregularities and requesting a recount in Wisconsin and filing lawsuits in Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Georgia. Well, Joe Biden's campaign is expressing optimism at how things are shaping up. They're warning supporters to stay patient and to stay calm as vote counting continues. Well, let's get more now from France 24's Jessica Le Mazurier, who joins us from Delaware, which is, of course, the headquarters of the Biden campaign team. It is a state that Joe Biden can call home as well. Jessica, how are things shaping up?
Well, Jen O'Malley Dillon, his campaign who's in charge of Biden's campaign, has struck an upbeat tone. The Biden camp really believes that victory could be imminent. And she told reporters earlier on today that the story of today is going to be a very positive story. She also told everyone to remain patient and calm. The votes continue to be counted, but certainly there is an atmosphere of optimism here in Wilmington at the Biden campaign headquarters.
OK, so a bit of optimism there. Any clues as to when we might know what? And do you think it's still a bit too early to be talking about the party? And apparently some fireworks that might be set off from where you are right now, if indeed things turn out in Biden's favour.
Yes, all eyes are on those key battleground states where votes are still being counted, and in particular in Georgia, the margins are really razor thin. So we're all on tenterhooks, and we could be waiting quite some time. The Biden camp did suggest that victory might be imminent, but we could be waiting into the weekend for clear results to come out. There is a party that is planned to take place here if and when we do have enough results to put Biden over that magic 270 number, the number of electoral college votes that he needs to clinch the presidency. But we could still be waiting some time. If you can see where I am, I'm in front of a car park that is outside the Chase Center in Wilmington, and this is where a victory party would take place. There's a stage behind me, this huge flag hoisted up on cranes, and what will happen is that cars will drive in with Biden supporters and they'll all be honking their horns, and he would take to the stage here. But we could still be waiting for quite some time for that to happen, if at all.
Okay, well, thank you very much indeed for that update from Delaware, France 24's Jessica Lemazurier there at the headquarters of the Biden campaign. Well, for more, we can speak now to Mitchell Robertson, who's a fellow of the Rothermere American Institute at the University of Oxford across the Channel. Thank you very much indeed for speaking to us. Let's talk first about all these legal moves that the Trump campaign team, they've got their legal teams mobilized. Are they having any visible impact, or do you think they're likely to?
I don't think so, and in some ways, I don't think they're intended to. I think these are public relations stunts. These are intended to cast doubts about the legitimacy of the election. That's what they're trying to do. That's why you see Rudy Giuliani out front. I mean, maybe there's some lawyers working behind the scenes, but this is centred as a publicity campaign.
Why would that be a publicity campaign? What's the strategy there behind what President Trump has in mind, if indeed he's just trying to sow seeds of confusion?
I think they know they're losing. They've known they've been losing for a little while. I mean, that was evident in the last days of the campaign. There was some good news early on for the Trump camp, say in Florida, but I think all the news is bad. I mean, we're seeing these states come in. That the prediction is that Biden will win soon, as your previous reporter said. And I think this is just a Hail Mary to see what they can do, because they know that if all those votes are counted, if all those remaining votes are counted, they're going to lose. So they need to do something to change the game and change the narrative. And that's been the motif, I suppose, of Trump's presidency. That the idea that if he gets out there first, he can control the media narrative.
Indeed. I mean, voter turnout ought to have made this election pretty clear cut. You had record turnout, massive numbers of voters. So apathy wasn't really an issue this time, like so many said there was voter apathy in 2016, particularly in the Democratic camp. I mean, what does that tell us? It just tells us, I'm answering my own question. Tell me if you agree. It's a massively divided country.
It really is. And I think the thing about these two candidates is people have very strong opinion about them. And you can see this as the election as a referendum on Trump. And America has very strong opinions on Donald Trump, and they're in two very, very different camps. And you're willing to see people all in for Trump or they're all against Trump. There is very, very little middle ground in America right now.
Yeah, I mean, just picking up on, Trump's tactics. I mean, I just wonder how you view him moving forward. What kind of a presence would he maintain in the political field were he to be voted out as a result of that election?
I mean, I think the thing that observers of American politics have been saying for 4 years is we just don't know. We'll have to see. I feel like the phrase unprecedented has been used a lot over the last 4 years. I mean, Trump will be presuming, and we should say that the election isn't over yet, hasn't finally been called. If Biden is indeed to win, but President Trump will remain president through to near the end of January. So there's a long time between now and then. So there's a lot he could do. I mean, he's got to start setting himself up for what he's going to do post presidency if indeed he loses, and whether that's in the media, whether that's in politics still. Does he run again? That all remains to be seen.
It was interesting when he made that declaration of victory on Wednesday morning, and there were a lot of Republicans who are very uncomfortable with his choices of words, his decision to announce victory. And I'm just wondering whether perhaps, are you seeing signs that perhaps Republicans at a senior level are starting to put a bit of distance between them and the Trump brand, if you like?
You're starting to see a little bit of it, but much like as it's been over the last 4 years, the Republican leaders have been very, very reluctant to distance themselves from Trump. I mean, he is, to go back to our previous question, he is such a force. People have such strong opinions about him. They feel such loyalty to him. So I think there is a bit of a danger of them being Republican leaders being seen to be against Trump, because if they're elected officials, they know they're going to be coming up for re-election in 2, 4, or 6 years. I think they're a bit worried about the Trump voters and the loyalty that he maintains still.
Okay, and just lastly, I mean, just any further thoughts as to when a winner might be determined? What's your hunch?
I mean, I think that we're not at the end yet, but I think we can start to see the end come into view. I think we'll know more, speaking in US time, by the end of today, by the end of Thursday in America, we should maybe have a result there in Nevada and Arizona, which would just be enough to put Biden over the line. And Pennsylvania, which would be Pennsylvania is such a key state at this point now, because if Trump doesn't win that, he will no longer be the president. But that is unlikely to come in today. So I think maybe the end of Thursday, so Friday morning Europe time, but it could well be over the weekend, particularly if it all hinges on Pennsylvania, which, as we started this out with, there's a lot of court cases floating about and accusations floating about.
There certainly are. There's a lot of tensions too. We're going to go to Philadelphia in just a moment. But thank you very much indeed for bringing us that analysis. Mitchell Robertson, Fellow of the Rothermere American Institute at Oxford University. Thank you. Well, we're going to head to Philadelphia briefly because there are protests there taking place. As we were saying, Pennsylvania, such an important state. And there are really protesters from both camps that have gathered there in Philadelphia, close to polling stations where the vote counts are taking place. A lot of anger, large crowds gathered there. There are 20 electoral college votes up for grabs in Pennsylvania. And as our guest was just saying, whoever wins Pennsylvania has a very important prize. It's more important in a way to Joe Biden at this stage because, well, it's important to both candidates. Obviously, there are 20 electoral college votes up for grabs, and we still don't have a final outcome from Pennsylvania. Vote counting underway. Still thousands more ballots still to be counted. So that's the scene there. Clearly a pro-Trump protest happening. Well, in Arizona, Michigan, crowds of angry Donald Trump protesters have also gathered at vote counting stations. This follows a series of unsubstantiated rumors that votes for Trump are deliberately being disregarded. Meanwhile, in Detroit, Trump supporters have gathered at a vote counting center chanting "Stop the Count," whilst anti-Trump protesters have demanded a complete vote count in Detroit and in several other US cities. France 24's Peter O'Brien has this report.
Hours after Fox News and the Associated Press projected Joe Biden would win Arizona, local Republicans still believe it should be Donald Trump's. A crowd of them, many carrying firearms, turned up to a counting office in Maricopa County to show their anger, forcing it to close its doors to the public. Some falsely claimed their votes weren't counted because they were marked in Sharpie pen, which they said the voting machines couldn't read.
Which one of you guys were forced, not asked to, but forced to use a Sharpie?
County officials reminded people that Sharpies are in fact their preferred pen for filling out ballots, and observers from both parties and the public oversee the count. Over in Detroit, Michigan, police intervened to make sure a few dozen people didn't interrupt a vote count there.
We just want to see the vote. We want to see that it's been accurately counted, that nothing's been changed, that the name on it reflects what's in the book.
I see a lot of fraud, and that's why I'm here. So yeah, and I feel that it's just unconstitutional. It's not good.
Michigan is one of the various states where Republicans have filed lawsuits over the election. Donald Trump has insisted without evidence that there were major problems with the voting and counting, especially with mail-in ballots.
Okay, we're going to keep a close eye on all the latest developments in the United States throughout the course of this evening. But we're going to move on now to some other world news. Now, here in France, we've had 1.5 million confirmed cases of COVID-19 since the beginning of the pandemic, as well as 38,000 or more deaths, making it the 7th highest death toll in the world. Well, today, the health authorities announced a further 58,046 new cases for the last 24 hours alone. That is a new record. 363 deaths were also reported. Well, in a bid to tighten up the lockdown, the Paris authorities have today announced a ban on delivery and takeaway services after 10 p.m. Across France, more than 80% of the country's ICU beds are now occupied by COVID-19 patients. And here in the Paris region, hospitals are at 92% capacity. Well, here's what the French health minister, Olivier Véran, had to say.
If we don't respect the lockdown measures properly, And if the virus continues to spread at its current speed, then there's a high risk that hospitals across the country will reach their maximum capacity by mid-November. This would mean 7,000 of the people in ICUs would be COVID patients. That's over 70% of our total maximum capacity. The second wave would therefore be bigger and last longer than the first one.
The French health minister speaking there, while Greece has today announced the nationwide lockdown, saying that the country's hospitals are under intense pressure. Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis says that he wanted to act before the infection rate reached the kinds of levels that it's reached in neighbouring countries, adding that the situation could get a lot worse before it gets better. Well, today Greece announced the daily record of 2,917 cases. The president of Kosovo resigned with immediate effect today after his indictment for war crimes was confirmed by a tribunal in The Hague. Hashim Thaçi told a news press conference in Pristina that he felt his resignation was necessary to protect the integrity of the state. He's accused of being responsible for the murders of nearly 100 civilians during the war of the late 1990s. He denies any wrongdoing. France 24's Sharon Gaffney has this report.
A key figure in Kosovo's war of independence from Serbia, Hashim Thaçi has resigned with immediate effect from the role of president. The former rebel leader is to face charges at The Hague for war crimes and crimes against humanity.
In order to protect the integrity of the office of the president and the country, as well as the dignity of its citizens, I am resigning from the position of President of the Republic of Kosovo.
The 52-year-old was indicted along with 9 other former guerrilla leaders in June. He faces charges including murder, enforced disappearance, persecution and torture, but denies committing any crime. Thaçi was a senior commander of the Kosovo Liberation Army during the War of Independence from Serbia in the late 1990s. He later became Prime Minister before being elected President of Kosovo in 2016. Prosecutors in The Hague accused Thaçi of being criminally responsible for nearly 100 murders during a war that left at least 10,000 people dead, mostly ethnic Albanians. The conflict was one of several that followed the breakup of the former Yugoslavia and the fall of communism.
Now, Ethiopia says it has entered an unexpected war in the northern region of Tigray. Well, tensions have been escalating since September when Tigray held regional elections, which were deemed to be illegal by the federal government. Well, the tensions come despite international attempts to avert a conflict between government forces and a powerful ethnic faction. Well, according to an army spokesperson, soldiers are being dispatched to Tigray from across the country, and humanitarian sources have been reporting shelling and shooting in the area since the early hours of this morning. Well, here's the Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed.
Forces who betrayed Ethiopia attacked our troops while they were asleep at their camp and in Mekelle city. This shameful act will be averted once and for all with joint efforts of the people of Ethiopia and the Ministry of Defense.
The Ethiopian Prime Minister there. Well, France 24's Maria Gert Nicolescu is in Addis Ababa. She's got this update for us.
Tensions have been growing now for months between the Tigray People's Liberation Front, also called the TPLF. So they're the ruling party in the northern region of Tigray. And Abiy Ahmed, ever since the prime minister was appointed in 2018. The Tigrayan party had huge political power for decades before Abiy Ahmed, who is from the Oromia region, became prime minister. For the past 2 years, Tigrayans have been sidelined from the political scenes, and authorities in Tigray are saying that they're being unfairly targeted and scapegoated for the country's problems. They also refused to join Abiy's new party coalition, the Prosperity Party, and they opposed the government's decision to postpone elections due to COVID-19. So these tensions then further escalated in September when Tigray decided to hold regional elections deemed illegal by the federal government. So we're seeing on the one side a very isolated region that has lost all its powers, and on the other a prime minister who's not willing to let the region dictate its own laws.